Away the lads, welcome today to part 2 of our mini-series where we will be laying out the plans for coming summer, as last 18 months transfer-wise have been a little disappointing if you are a Newcastle United fan, and this is why I will be presenting you with 30, yes, you heard me correct, 30 possible transfer targets for this summer. A couple of strikers, a couple of right wingers, a couple of midfielders, some left backs, some goalkeepers, and a couple of central defenders. Out of which I will be selecting a couple of players that should fit the 200 million spending budget which I have given us. This spending budget has been acquired by selling Kelly, selling Almiron, not signing anyone over the last couple 18 months, as well as selling Willock, Longstaff, and possibly some others, as you have seen in previous video. If you haven't checked previous video out, please go ahead and do so right now, because then this video will probably make a bit more sense as to how we got that much money. But without any further ado, I suggest we just get straight into it with the first player, starting off with striker. And starting off with our first target in striker, I want to talk about Jonathan David, who will be available on a free transfer this summer. I have chosen either one or two cheap, mid-tier priced, and pricey dream signings out of each position. Starting off with striker. The two cheap strikers, first of all, is Jonathan David, who, as I said before, is available on a free transfer. The thing with Jonathan David is he has been linked with Europe's elite for a pretty long time, consistently scoring goals in the league and for Gent before. So there is obviously a very talented player there. He himself probably wants to join Barcelona if we are to believe the press around him. But on a free deal, I reckon there are a lot worse options out there to go for. Jonathan David, who is quite a creative striker as well, I wouldn't mind it. The second possible striker option I want to talk about is George Mikautadze, the Georgian striker who now plies his trade for Lyon in the Ligue 1. And basically Lyon are in a unbelievably difficult situation when it comes to their finances, which means they already had to sell some players in January, which is why we saw, for example, Maxence Cacare go to Como in Italy. Now, they aren't done selling yet because they have not sold enough players to meet the regulations which will keep them in the league for next season, meaning you could get Mikautadze on a pretty cut price deal for maybe around £20 million. And he is actually surprisingly well-rounded. He's a very, very good dribbler with 2.8 progressive carries per 90, which puts him in top 10% of European forwards. Going along with that, he has 1.8 successful take-ons per 90 minutes and even 0.3 interceptions per 90 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for a forward actually shows that he is quite willing to do the dirty dog work and the pressing work, which is very important for a Newcastle system. So anyhow, maybe have a look at George Mikautadze. As for one more mid-tier priced player, I would go for Liam Delap. Liam Delap is very, very raw still. This is the first season where he has actually shown his talent on the biggest stage. Actually, the first season he's played on the biggest stage. But if you ask any Hull City fans, maybe for sure any Stoke fans, they will tell you he was pretty disappointing when out on loan at their club. So there is still some learning curves to be had with him. His development won't be singular or linear, as some people hope or believe players' developments should be. But there is obviously a very talented player there. He is incredibly physical. He has an incredible burst of pace. And as James Lawrence Alcott describes it very aptly, I would say, he has that look about him where he's constantly looking for a dangerous space for him to run into, a way for him to find that breakthrough goal. And that's a very, very useful trait to have, in my opinion, in your striker. Our other mid-tier ranged priced striker, in my opinion, is Victor Osimhen. We have to talk about Victor Osimhen and why his price keeps just falling down and down and down. And at some point you have an unbelievable player, available for a bargain because other clubs have turned up their noses at him. And if you have a look at his stats, there really isn't much reason why people have turned their noses up at Victor Osimhen. Maybe the whole contract situation with Napoli last summer, and then Chelsea and Al Hilal making their interest very clear in him, kind of screwed up his situation for him a little bit, but he's still killing it out on loan in Turkey with Galatasaray. And I think when he gets back to Napoli, he will still be available to sell, available for other clubs to buy, as they still have an informed Romelu Lukaku on their books. So maybe a cut price 45, 50 million pound deal for Victor Osimhen could very much be a possibility. And I know what you're thinking. With all of these strikers, actually, why would we sign one? We have Alexander Isak. Well, go back to the last video, please. Watch that one. There, I talk about how letting go of Callum Wilson means we don't have another backup striker, especially because I sent William Osula out on loan as well. So there's a first option. We need someone who can give Alexander Isak a rest when needed. And second of all, I don't think it would be a bad idea for us, as we have been linked to players like Victor Gyökeres in some newspapers. I don't think it would be the worst idea to have someone play off Alexander Isak, or have Alexander Isak play off of a target forward. That's why, kind of like Villa do with Morgan Rogers, who plays off Ollie Watkins really effectively, and maybe Asensio will play in that role too, or Marcus Rashford even, because he's playing with the number 9 role. But as for Newcastle, I think we could do with another forward who can make serious minutes without having to start every game. I think that would really, really improve us. And maybe Osimhen wants to start every game, but even the two up top of Victor Osimhen and Alexander Isak sounds class to me. The two expensive options in the striker role are, first of all, Matheus Cunha, who's having an unbelievable season for Wolves at the moment. He is overperforming his underlying statistics quite a lot because he isn't that great of a finisher. What he is very, very good at, though, is dribbling, progressing the ball up the field. I think if we were to sign Matheus Cunha, he would be an option in the number 10 role, in striker role, and on the wings as well, both right wing and left wing. So you have a very, very versatile player there. But I do think he is running very, very hot right now, and it most likely will come down quite a bit, especially the amount of goals he's scoring right now, I believe will come down. I'm sorry for playing with the microphone. But yeah, Matheus Cunha, I think, could be an expensive shout for us, but maybe if other top Premier League clubs are in for him, we should be in the mix, maybe. The last and most expensive target in striker I want to suggest to you is Lois Openda. And this is really one to dream on, because I can't really see a world in which we go for Lois Openda, but he is actually pretty well suited to the way we play. He has an incredible burst of pace about him, which means on the counter-attack he is very useful, but he likes to receive the ball deep as well. He's an unbelievable outlet. He gets quite a lot of assists for someone who plays in the number 9 role. He has very, very good understanding of how to receive progressive passes from the midfield, from the fullbacks, turn around, use his body, and get the ball forward, so that other players can get their positions right and be outlets for him, with him creating shot action, or with him doing the shot creating actions so that other people can have the shot. He isn't necessarily a number 9 who will have all the shots himself. So I think, again, someone playing off Alexander Isak, that could be a pretty interesting shout for us. Now it is time for our right wingers. And the first right winger I want to talk about is Leroy Sané, whose contract is running out at Bayern Munich this summer. And it's very, very simple with him. A player like Leroy Sané, just have a look real quick at his stats. They're absolutely fantastic. But a player like Leroy Sané, who is available on a free, you just have to be in for him in for him, in my opinion. I don't see him extending his deal at Bayern Munich, especially now Bayern Munich have extended Alphonso Davies' contract, and I do believe Kimmich's contract will be extended as well, which probably means Sané isn't that much of a priority anymore for them to extend. And he just is a fantastic player. Company isn't really using him a lot this season, but still in just under 900 minutes in the Bundesliga, he still has 5 goals, 2 assists, which are pretty okay stats. His stats all across his career have been very consistent, both his creative stats as well as his goal scoring stats themselves. Back in his Manchester City days, which I think most Newcastle United fans will remember him best for, he was an unbelievable player off of the left wing, but for Bayern Munich he has shown he's just as effective on the right. So as a free transfer, there's no way to go wrong really with Leroy Sané. The other cheap option is stealing Tyler Dibbling out of a relegated Southampton side. There will be a lot, and I mean a lot, of interest in Tyler Dibbling, who is still only 18 years old come the summer, who is homegrown, who has shown this season to be an incredible talent and have a very, very high ceiling, because he has very much been the bright spark in Southampton's team this season. But I do believe, as we have incredibly big needs at the right wing, we should be all over this one. Now, for our 2 mid-tier expensive right wingers, these are both my favorite options to suggest. First of all, starting off with Noni Madueke. And Noni Madueke is a player, first of all, I think we should be able to get him, because Chelsea have shown us before anyone not named Cole Palmer is up for sale. 35 million for Noni Madueke. I think you are getting someone who is still very young, only 22 years of old, but is world class, and I genuinely mean world class when it comes to driving the ball into dangerous areas. He has, let me have a look here, 3.5 shots per 90 minutes, which is incredibly good for a winger, as well as 6.5 progressive carries per 90 minutes, which puts him in the top 2% of wingers, and he has 7.8 touches in the opposition box, which puts him in the top 5% of wingers in Europe. So yeah, he's unbelievably effective in just bringing the ball into dangerous areas, something players like Alain Saint-Maximin was incredible at. Doku is incredible at. Bakayoko is also very, very great at. You'll see that in just a second. But the difference with Madueke is that he does combine it with that tiny bit more of consistent output. And I think that's why he would take our attack to genuinely a next level. I would love Noni Madueke. I just touched on it before. Bakayoko is also world class at those things, driving the ball into dangerous areas. He is also an unbelievable outlet, receiving the ball or receiving progressive passes 14 times a game. And okay, PSV are very, very dominant in the Eredivisie, but you want a player who's playing there to have those dominant statistics. Otherwise, it's not really worth buying them. Anthony, for example, did not have any really outstanding statistics like this one back when he was playing for Ajax, and somehow Man United still paid 85 million pounds for him. But 35 million pounds for Bakayoko, I think that would be a fantastic deal as well, if we weren't able to get Noni Madueke, for example. The 2 more expensive targets for me on the right wing, first of all, has to be Ademola Lookman. And Lookman has had some history in the Premier League, and maybe not even the most positive history, getting relegated with Fulham, where he probably is most remembered for that horrific Panenka penalty. At Everton, things didn't really work out for him either. I think he was on loan at Leicester at one point as well, or maybe I'm just making that one up. He defo played at Leipzig as well, but nowhere has he been as important and as great as he has been for Atalanta, scoring a hat-trick against Bayer Leverkusen last season in the Europa League final. So that shows you he is a player who isn't really bothered by the bigger occasion, by a step up. And with him now having gathered the experience he has gathered playing for both Atalanta and Nigeria, maybe a return to the Premier League could be on the cards for him. He obviously still counts as homegrown, so that helps us a lot as well. I would really like the signing of Ademola Lookman, but I do think he would cost us at least 60 million. The most expensive target on the right wing I wanted to talk about is Brian Mbeumo. And the thing with Brian Mbeumo is he is going to cost the most out of these right wingers, but I don't even think he would be the best option for us. I wanted to sound him out, as a lot of people have seen that we were linked with a January move for him, although I don't think that was ever really on the cards given our financial situation. But he is a very, very good player. Given the fact that he is running very, very hot this season, he has been overperforming his XG, scoring 14 goals and providing 3 assists in the Premier League this season. But I don't think that's very sustainable of him. I think Brentford could very much be what Frankfurt is in the Bundesliga and Atalanta is in the Serie A, where give them whatever, and then especially give Gasperini whatever attacker you want, and he will turn them into a goal machine and into an output machine. Whereas move them on for big money and see them play for someone else, aka Sebastian Haller, Jovic, now Marmouche remains to be seen, Andre Silva, and they just don't really get that same output anymore. I really, really hope that's not Mbeumo, because I do see a world in which we do end up with him, and he looks like a class player, but I do think he's running a little bit hot. That's why 65 million for me is a little much. Now I would like to talk about some midfielders, and I have sounded out 3 more creative midfielders and 3 more defensive-minded midfielders. Starting off with the cheap attacking-minded midfielder, I want to talk about Fabian Ruiz. Fabian Ruiz, obviously, most of you probably know him from last summer's Euros, where he was absolutely magnificent for Spain. And that magnificent player has always been there. He was that magnificent both for Napoli and for Real Betis. And it took him a while to get going at PSG as well, but right now he is one of their most important players. But he's 29, and PSG is a team which are jam-packed of these silky, majestic midfielders, but don't really have physical midfielders. So I think maybe one of them could go, and I don't think it would be Zaire Emery. I highly doubt it would be Vitinha, and after a year it also wouldn't be Joao Neves. So I do believe maybe Fabian Ruiz is there to be had for around about 20 million pounds or maybe even less. And his defensive numbers aren't really there, but that's also not important for him, as he's just an incredible all-rounder when it comes to the attacking aspects of the game. He's a very good passer, very good creator, very good dribbler, takes some shots, he's an all-round threat, and I think he could make sure a player like Bruno Guimaraes or a player like Joelinton could finally get some more rest, because I am very, very afraid, and I will knock on wood, but I am very, very afraid one of them could get injured at some point. My mid-tier priced midfielder is Alex Baena from Villarreal, and just have a look at this guy's stats. For context, I will take them here with me. He is in the top 1% for midfielders when it comes to assists, expected assists, key passes, of which he has 3.5 per 90, shot creating actions, of which he has 6, as well as being an absolute set piece specialist. And with Trippier now making less and less appearances for us, I do believe we could do with a set piece specialist like Alex Baena. He is still only 24 years old. He was very close, apparently, in January to agreeing a move to Al Nassr, but that eventually fell through, meaning he has European ambition. Hopefully, I hope Newcastle go for him, because he would be fantastic for us and an unbelievably natural replacement for Bruno Guimaraes if he wants to have some rest, as well as being a long-term replacement for Joelinton. And actually, maybe mean less special than Joelinton, and I mean special in the very best way possible, because Joelinton is such an such a unique profile that is really hard to replace in this midfield. But if he could be replaced in the long term with Alex Baena, who is more of a specialist, I would love to see that. The third option as creative midfielder, I've gone for Ezequiel Palacios from Bayer Leverkusen. And Leverkusen obviously have had the season they had last year. There's not much to be said about that that hasn't been said online already. Ezequiel Palacios, a bit of the same as Baena and Fabian Ruiz. Doesn't really have the best defensive output, but an incredible passer, an incredible creator, just someone who does not lose the ball at all. I think he has a 92% pass accuracy across this season, which is just great. And sometimes it's that simple. Just have a midfielder who won't lose possession, keeps your play ticking over, keeps midfield, keeps the ball flowing from defense to midfield to attack. I think that's enough. The three defensive midfielders I want to talk about are starting off with the cheap defensive midfielder, Yangel Herrera, who is a very, very good defender. He combines 1.5 interceptions every 90 minutes with 2.8 tackles and 1.8 aerials won. He also combines that with nearly 2 shots per 90, meaning he likes to drift into a little bit more dangerous areas, and I think Tonali does that as well. So maybe he would be a very, very natural replacement slash cover for Tonali, as well as being able to play a bit more advanced in a Joelinton position and keep his tenacity without maybe being as creative as Joelinton is. But in some games you just need a double pivot, so I think Yangel Herrera would be very, very useful for that. If you wanted to pay a bit more money, I think Pape Sarr of Tottenham could be a very, very interesting option for us. He is still very raw, but I do think there is a very, very good squad player for the Premier League there. I don't think he's a potential superstar, but you don't always need potential superstars. You need your Longstaffs, your Willocks, your Joelintons who keep your team ticking over, who keep fighting for every ball, and who aren't fussed about sitting on the bench for 1 or 2 games, given they have contributed in the grand scheme of the season. And those players are very, very important, especially when European conjecture gets thrown into the mix as well. The pricey option on CDM, and I've gone really, really bold here, I don't think we would be in any sort of discussion for him, nor would he most likely be interested in joining us, but there is a very interesting conversation to be had about Aurélien Tchouameni at Real Madrid. He has been playing most of his football at centre back this season, which is obviously not the position he wants to be playing in, as well as Real Madrid just having an incredible stockpile of talented midfielders. Think about Bellingham, Valverde, Camavinga. Those three are most likely the future for Real Madrid, and that already does not include Tchouameni. So I do believe there is a deal to be done there, but I've given him the 90 million price tag, which is something I don't see us spending, especially not on a defensive midfielder this summer, given we have more pressing issues and more glaring weaknesses in this squad. But I thought it was worth a mention. Now, we have 6 central defenders to talk about. First 2 cheap ones, then 2 mid-tier priced, and obviously then 2 expensive signings. One of the 2 cheaper options is, in my opinion, Trevoh Chalobah. Trevoh Chalobah is a very, very interesting player because, in my opinion, he has been quietly disrespected by Chelsea, being forced out on loan to Crystal Palace and then recalled in the midst of their injury crisis at centre back, despite him having actually a pretty good time of it at Crystal Palace. Now he's back at Chelsea, but given the fact he is homegrown, so he would be 100% pure profit, and the fact his name is not Cole Palmer, I do believe he would be up for sale, and maybe with a £30 million offer, we could tempt Chelsea into bringing Chalobah to Newcastle, and I think he would be a fantastic signing for us. He is so unbelievably composed on the ball. That's the thing, right? With defenders, everybody knows these kind of defenders where you're kind of waiting for them all game to make that one mistake which will lead to a chance for the opponent. And it's really not enjoyable to have those defenders in your back line. Trevoh Chalobah is exactly the opposite. You never suspect him uh, to go ahead and make a mistake because he's just so unbelievably composed. I love him. I would love to see him at Newcastle. The second cheap option is Taylor Hardwood-Bellis, and I think Hardwood-Bellis, the same thing has to be said for him as can be said for Tyler Dibling. As soon as Southampton go down, those two players are just too good for the championship, so they most likely will be stolen away from them. I think a 20 to 25 million pound offer could do the trick for Hardwood-Bellis, and given the fact he also came through the City Academy, I do believe there is, in the long term, a pretty great player in there as well. He also has quite a lot of attacking potential as well for a centre back, which especially for a centre back from Southampton, that's pretty strange, but that's a plus. And given we are replacing Fabian Schär most likely in that position in the long term, who is also a very very good centre back, but has a lot of different assets and aspects to his game. That's why I've gone ahead and looked at defenders who also have the same going for them, if you know what I mean. And that brings us directly onto my third option, and probably my favorite, Wilfried Sinjo. Sinjo was a right back, actually, at the start of his career, but now has moved into centre back because he very much has the physicality and the height to be a centre back, but he's incredible at it as well. His defensive stats are very, very good, but look at the rest of his stats. For a central defender, he's unbelievably comfortable at the ball. He creates, he progresses, he passes. He genuinely is the most natural replacement out there, in my opinion, for a Fabian Schär who also does those things as well in a 4-back. Because that's the difficult part. There are more centre backs like Fabian Schär who have a contribution in the possession end of your strategy, but not many centre backs do that while playing in a back four. Most of them do that while playing in a back five. So that's why Wilfried Sinjo, in my opinion, is a very, very interesting centre back for us to look at. The other mid-tiered prize I want to talk about is Piero Hincapié. And I more so wanted to talk about him because I saw we were linked with him during the last week of the January transfer window. And I do believe he is a very, very interesting option for us, especially now Kelly has left the club, because he is a player a lot like Kelly. He plays as a left-sided centre back or as a left back. Has played for Leverkusen in a back three on the left-hand side, most recently and most often. So he would be a very, very interesting option for us, especially given he's only 23 years old. But I do believe it's a bigger priority right now to bring in a young right-footed centre-back than it is a left-footed centre-back, given I still have a lot of hope and a lot of belief in Sven Botman. Our first expensive centre-back is Giorgio Scalvini, and Scalvini is kind of the same as Sinjo is, where he is unbelievably comfortable on the ball. He progresses the ball very, very well from defense into the midfield, or maybe sometimes even onto the attack. His expected assist stats are actually quite high because at Atalanta, while playing in the 3-back, he has been given a lot of freedom to do creative stuff. But I don't think he will be given as much freedom in a Newcastle side where we only play 4 at the back. So whilst he looks like a pretty natural replacement for Fabian Schär, I don't think he's as natural as a Wilfried Sinjo. And with him, you also have the added remark that he has just been back from a very, very long ligament injury, which always is a pickle for young players. The last option I wanted to talk about was an option where we just kind of went full circle. Last summer, we brought in Lloyd Kelly from Bournemouth on a free. Bournemouth replaced him with a £12 million deal for Dean Huijsen. We then sold Kelly to Juventus, who sold Huijsen to Bournemouth for £20 million, meaning maybe the circle goes round and Dean Huijsen ends up at Newcastle? Yeah, I highly doubt it myself. As well, especially given He has only been playing there for literally less than a season. Bournemouth would slap an incredible price tag on his head, and rightly so. He's unbelievably talented. But if we were able to match that price tag, I think Dean Huijsen would be an incredible signing for us. Now, we are on to the last page. First of all, I want to talk about some left backs. A cheap option at left back could be Javi Galan from Atletico Madrid. He is a very, very good defender. As you can see, his defensive stats are just very, very solid. He's a reliable defender. He brings a lot of experience, now also brings Champions League experience as well. And I think that would give a very, very good cover option to an inexperienced Lewis Hall who doesn't really have a backup option apart from Dan Burn behind him. If we wanted to play a bit more, I think we could go for Mittelstedt. You see, the thing with Mittelstedt is he right now is a more impressive player than Lewis Hall is because these are his statistics, and as you can see, he is pretty great at everything. And I think that would mean he plays a lot of minutes for us, but I wouldn't really like to see that because I think Lewis Hall needs to get minutes in order to develop because there it really is a very talented and a very, very, very special player in there. He just needs to go the extra miles. The first steps he has been taking this season are magnificent, fantastic, but as well for our future and for England's future, I think Lewis Hall needs to get more minutes. That's why I would bring in a 31-year-old Javi Galan, I think, before I would bring in Mittelstedt. The more expensive option I wanted to talk about was Milos Kerkez. If you genuinely wanted Lewis Hall to get some to get a rival for his position, shall we say, then I think bringing in Milos Kerkez could be very good because although Kerkez has more output on the surface of things, his underlying statistics are actually very, very similar to Lewis Hall, and they are both a similar age, so I think they could battle it out for the left back position and push each other to new limits. But 60 million for a player who will be doing that is a lot of money, and I think 60 million is the minimum it would take to get Milos Kerkez out of Bournemouth, so maybe that's not even really worth it for us. Finishing off my transfer targets, I wanted to talk about some goalkeepers. Very quickly, Guillaume Restet is a very young goalkeeper from Toulouse who seemingly always produce young and talented goalkeepers. Same thing goes for him. He's 18 years old. It would be a low risk investment at not that big of a price with Pope or Martin Dubravka running down their time and their contract in between our sticks and then gradually giving more and more game time to Guillaume Restet. I think that could be a good option. The same kind of goes for Lucas Chevalier, although Chevalier already has some Champions League experience, so maybe he would demand a starting position, not necessarily straight away, but after half a season, I think you kind of would have to or start him or buy him and loan him out or loan him straight back out to Lille, for example. The more expensive option in the goalkeeping area for me could be Trubin from Benfica. We already have seen keepers from the Liga NOS translate pretty okay to the Premier League. That wasn't the case for Vlachodimos, but Vlachodimos is just a very, very strange goalkeeper in my opinion, and Trubin still is only 24 years old. He already showed a lot of potential back when he was playing for Shakhtar Donetsk, and now he does for Benfica, so I think he could be a very, very good long-term option for us as well between the sticks. Now, these are the signings I have selected for this transfer window. I've spent about £200 million on 9 players, which is an incredible outlay, and this would be a fantastic summer for us, but I don't necessarily believe we will do all the transfers. That's why I have ordered them in order of importance to me. Starting off on the left-hand side at the top, obviously, Wilfried Sinho. He is the most important player in my opinion, because I do think he is the most natural replacement to Fabian Schär. Then I would sign Madueke as well and Baena. Those 3 are the priority in my opinion. If we end the window only signing those 3, I would still be a little disappointed, but I would say we have fixed our most glaring issues and I would be very optimistic for the next season. If we find any more money, sign David on a free. Instantly. A free transfer for a backup striker who can also play as a support act for Alexander Isak. I see great benefit in that. Javi Galan for 10 million is also a very, very good backup for Lewis Hall, so I would go for him as well. Chalobah is another name who could play in the defense for us, and I think Chalobah would mean we don't necessarily have to buy a left-footed centre back as well, as given the fact that Sinho is comfortable playing in fullback, I don't think he would be out of position or out of comfort playing on the left-hand side, or if we could play Chalobah there, if we could play Fabian Schär there even, I don't really mind that. I don't think that's a bad idea. And don't forget, we also still have Dan Burn, so that would kind of mean our centre back option, our centre back depth is finally in a good place. If we then still have some money over, I would sign Yangel Herrera first as our CDM cover, then maybe go in for Tyler Dibling. And that goalkeeping position right now is the least of my priorities, given Dubravka's amazing form and Nick Pope is, in my opinion, still a very, very good goalkeeper. But those are my thoughts on the transfers. What do you think? Who would you sign given a 200 million budget out of the players I presented? Did I forget any players? Did I not mention any players who you think would be perfect for Newcastle? Please let me know in the comment section below. Let me know your selection in the comment section below. Go follow all of our pages on Instagram, on Facebook, on X, Magpie 24/7. You know the deal. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I would like to see you in the next one. Have a good one.